Thank you for having me. I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story that explains why I'm standing on the stage in front of you. It's a story about fear with regard to your career. It's a story about fear of the unknown and how that can prevent us from ever doing anything exciting and potentially rewarding with our time. And it's about how fear of failure can sabotage those attempts once we maybe are out there trying something. It's a story that begins over 5 years ago on the 9th floor of a corporate building overlooking London Bridge. And the story, I'm a junior management consultant climbing the first rung on the corporate ladder. It makes sense, you know. You leave university, you get that first job, everyone says well done, this is a sensible career path, your parents are happy. But there was one problem. I was bored, bored, bored. The story really starts 2 years later when I walk into my annual review meeting with my career counselor, and rather than handing him a folder of feedback, I tell him I want to go and be a pirate. I actually say I'm going to go and do something more exciting and entrepreneurial with my career. I didn't have the guts to tell him that the idea that I was leaving for was to create a business that would help all the other people in similar positions to do the same thing. Probably sensible not to burn too many of those bridges, although I'm sure I couldn't get that job back now. The story almost ended a year ago when, facing some of the biggest challenges of my life, and certainly of my career, I experienced what I guess I'd called a worry or anxiety-induced burnout. I got to the stage where I'd wake up every morning feeling like I'd drunk 4 espressos on an empty stomach. Normal emails made me spin off into a complete panic, and my accountant made me burst into tears. I know that's what they're for, but still, you get the picture. Now, this is a story about fear. It was fear of the unknown that kept me in the career that I knew that wasn't right for me for longer than I would have liked, and it was serious fear of failure that completely sabotaged my attempts a year ago for reasons that I'll come on to tell you about. In this talk, I'm going to argue that we live in an ever-changing and uncertain world. Clinging on to security, or maybe the conventional path, in the face of all this uncertainty is actually often not the smartest thing to do, and instead we should acclimatize ourselves more to fear, the helpful type of fear, not the fear that will keep you alive when you're considering jumping off a bridge, or real fear, but fear of the unknown and fear of failure, which actually will sabotage our attempts to have more than a boring career. So back to the story. There I am. Like many of you in this room, no doubt, starting my career in the corporate world. You know, it makes sense. You get experience, you get training, you pay off your student debt. It's secure, or at least you think it's secure. Now, I had 2 main problems with this environment. The first was that I felt like I'd ended up there by accident. The logical progression of a certain education, a certain level of grades, and it was a natural next place to go to. But again, as I say, it makes sense. You know, you want to afford a nice standard of living for yourself. You want to put all of this education to good use. As an aside on the money question, which is always the biggest factor in any career decision, obviously, it's important for us not to allow it to be an excuse as well as a reason. So there are 2 types of people in any big organization. In Camp 1, you have the people who know what they're doing there. They know what they're getting out of the experience. In Camp 2, you have the people who have ended up there by accident. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's very, very easy to find a sensible, safe job with an above-average salary and hold on to it. Now, it goes without saying I was obviously in Camp 2. The second problem I had with this environment was that none of the work really seemed to matter. And I don't mean Mother Teresa, save the world matter. I mean matter, full stop. 10, 15, 16-hour days polishing PowerPoint presentations and getting extremely good at Excel. Nothing seemed to change in the outside world. And in fact, taking Damiano's point from the previous talk, not only did sometimes things not change, but often the impact was exactly the opposite of the one that you wanted to be having with your work. So there I was, successfully or semi-successfully climbing this corporate ladder. I was no longer a junior management consultant. I was in danger of becoming part of the furniture. And I knew that this ladder wasn't my ladder. It's a very hierarchical, structured system, and no matter where you are on it, you can look up and you can pretty much predict, as long as you don't massively mess up, where you could be in 10 years' time. I knew it wasn't for me, but the problem, the eternal question, if not this, then what? And so began the voice in your head. And the voice in my head was telling me, you can't start a business, you don't have enough experience. You're only 27, you haven't got enough money. You're too young, people will laugh, it'll fail. Or, you're too old, you're already committed to this path. All of these things were very persuasive in my head. Fortunately for me, and obviously, I did get out. I got out for two reasons. The first reason was because the fear of the unknown, me predicting things about the next step that actually, how could I know how they were going to turn out? The fear of the unknown was outweighed by the pain of the present situation I was in. I got so demoralized, and for a conscientious, annoyingly hard-working kind of guy, I really was demotivated. I ended up reading masses of blogs and subscribing to newsletters which were very different to the world that I was in, talking about ideas, online, innovation, startups. And the distance between the world that I was in and the world that I was reading about was too much for me. The second reason I left was because I came across, or developed with a friend, an idea that was too good, or I felt was too good, to let go. And I'll tell you the story of that idea now. So it was a Friday in early 2009. I'd got to work in the dark, and I was certainly going to leave in the dark. And I know we all live in this city. That's not different for me in a job I hated to you guys in a job you might love. But no matter, when you're doing work that's demoralizing to you, and it's pitch black outside and raining, it makes things even harder. And there I am in the cubicle farm, tapping away at my spreadsheet, polishing it, making it look beautiful, even though I don't know what it's for. And this face pokes its head up from the cubicle next to mine and goes, "This is a bit rubbish, isn't it?" Enter Dom Jackman, my business partner. Now, Dom and I got on really well, and we both hatched a plan to escape, which is actually quite a big deal, because when you're in that environment, people don't want to admit to their peers and their colleagues how they feel, because you want to get ahead, you don't want to, might not want to leave, you might regret it. Anyway, Dom and I got on very well, and we began brainstorming all sorts of, frankly, awful business ideas. But the process was there, and we were excited about building something outside of this world. Eventually, we realized that the emotion that we were feeling, that stuckness, that, hang on, I've ended up here by accident, the fact that so many other people felt exactly the same way as us, was the idea that was worth pursuing. So we started an anonymous blog from the safety of our corporate jobs, the Escape blog. It's still going today. And like all good business ideas, I think, we started small. It was a clear problem that many people experienced, and it was a problem that we ourselves had a very personal relationship with. To cut a long story short, the next 2 years after we did Escape were a roller coaster of, frankly, fun. We had no expectations for this thing, despite the fact that we knew we wanted it to be our own salvation. To give you a short summary of what Escape does, is it's a network of people who sign up and say, yes, I agree with you guys, there is more to life than working in this big corporate company. And we stumbled across the business model, which was actually different organizations are prepared to pay to access these people. So there we were, poorer than we'd ever been, probably even since uni, but more rewarded and more fulfilled, and having a lot of fun with it. And the best thing about it was as a result of us standing up and saying, we're going to build this thing, people were making changes in their own careers. There was the hedge funder who ended up managing a beach lodge in northern Mozambique, and the accountant who went with the Halo Trust to Cambodia to clear mines, and dozens of other stories that keep coming in every week that made us feel this really is an idea that's worth pursuing. Fast forwarding a little bit more, we get to New York, and now 3 of us, an escaped investment banker, Mikey Howe, our third partner in crime. You're all meant to boo when I say investment banker, but he redeemed himself, and we went to New York. We went to New York, and we thought, hang on, guys, if we're going to give this idea the next 5 years of our lives, what could it become? And we came back this time last year with a big vision, a vision that was bigger than just the 3 of us. And in order to achieve this vision, we needed to raise quite a lot of money to hire the programmers and to build out the platform that was just introduced. This is where the story began to get interesting, at least for me. I felt myself beginning to run up against some serious psychological barriers. I'd never faced this much potential for failure before. So to give you a summary of what we were trying to achieve a year ago, we were trying to raise £600,000 and we're pitching to venture capitalists throughout London. We were writing this bloody book called the Escape Manifesto. Writing a book is hard enough at the best of times, let alone when you're trying to run a business and raise a whole load of cash. And we obviously had our business plan to think about. And the voice in my head was saying, you're not going to be able to write this book. You're certainly not going to be able to do it on time. Who are you to write this book? You're going to miss the deadline. People will laugh. You'll die alone and in a box somewhere. The voice in my head, usefully, was also saying, you're never going to raise this much money. And even if you do, you'll waste it because your business plan's rubbish. So I just want to draw your attention to some of these statements. They're all absolutes. They're all predicting the future. They're all catastrophizing. They're all predicting things that I can't predict. And they're also all related to things that actually aren't what I'm engaging with in that individual week. But what they are doing is paralyzing me. And I got to the stage where I couldn't work anymore. And I had to take time away from work, fortunately carried by my 2 partners, to really deal with these emotions. And this is what the core of this talk is about. 3 points. We crave security. It makes sense, you know. I'm not advocating irresponsibility or charging off into the unknown without a plan. We crave security. The problem is that security can often lead you to have a really boring career. And the second point is that what we perceive as safe often isn't safe. And the last 5 years certainly prove this. All these people, myself included, who charge into big corporate organizations, the moment the economy changes, the loyalty that you thought was being exchanged between you and your employer can evaporate. And I think it's very important to work in these organizations with an open mind. The second point is that we are wired to see threats everywhere. And again, we evolved to see threats everywhere because the foolish caveman, the one who wasn't that risk-averse, didn't make it. It was the one who was always up a tree freaking out about lions. Those are the genes that we've inherited, or I certainly have. So we are wired to see threats everywhere. The book, the investment, the business plan. Rather than seeing the upside in all of these things, I was freaking out about a downside which hadn't yet happened, but worrying about it was making that reality more probable. Self-sabotage. The third point is we practice experiential avoidance. Now, this is a behavioral psychology term for running away from something, even when that thing might be good for us, because of the fear. And I have a lot of experience of this. Procrastination is essentially the result of this kind of behavior. And the best way to explain this is to use today as an example. Thomas from TEDxLSE gets in touch. Rob, would you like to do a TEDx talk? Yeah, sure. Okay, fine, great. First reaction, first emotion I feel, fear. Everyone will laugh at me. This is a disaster. Why am I doing this? Then, imagine I ring up Thomas. I go, hey, Thomas, my great aunt Bessie has tea party on Saturday, the 9th of March. I'm afraid I can't do it. He says, no worries, maybe next time. I say, yeah, definitely, maybe next time. In getting out of that, I immediately feel relief. What my brain does is it says, whew, nice one, buddy. You and me. We're almost in for some serious fear there. And what your brain does is it reinforces the behavior. And what I'm saying is that rather than run away from the fear, not that we should embrace it, but that we should look at the reasons why we're scared of certain things. And I think this is really important because I recently heard a talk by Rob Archer, the career psychologist. And he said, what you need to do is pick up all your demons, put them in your backpack, and take baby steps towards the thing that you're scared of. And I would take that one step further. And I would say that you need to use the fear as a radar, because all of those things that were paralyzing me, the book, the investment, the business plan, the vision for the website, they were all worth achieving. Now, what I needed to do was to look more closely into the fear and understand, why is it am I so terrified of these challenges, opportunities? I was just seeing them as threats. I wanted to be on a beach somewhere in Goa. And I'd like to wrap up the talk by bringing it back to our story. This time a year ago, after 2, frankly, awful months where I felt like I was permanently wired and was being carried by my 2 business partners, we kept pushing. We turned down, like the fools we are, £600,000 from one of London's top venture capital investors because we felt like it didn't go with the ethos of what we were building. And we raised £600,000 from 395 of our own members. I submitted the book only 3 months after the deadline, and we released the first version of the website, our plan for a forward-looking LinkedIn that connects you with your future rather than focusing on your past. Am I still scared? Certainly, if I think about it every day. But I try and use the experience I went through last year and the fear that I experience on a weekly basis to alert me to stuff that is worth doing. And rather than running away from it, I have a little look closer to the things that I'm afraid of. So I would challenge all of you guys to do the same. We want to live remarkable lives. We don't have to all be high-profile entrepreneurs trying to be the next Steve Jobs, but in our own way, we want to do something that is meaningful to us. So my invitation to you is, don't fear the unknown. Don't fear failure. Embrace uncertainty. Fear boredom, fear regret, and then act on it. Thank you.